Today, I'm going over the difference between GCF, factoring, and solving. So GCF is we're looking for our greatest common factor. So we are asking ourselves the question, what do we have in common? What is there in common? Then when factoring, that means we are going from an expression or an equation like x squared plus x to x times x plus 1. So this would be my factored form. And then when we solve, we are setting our factored form equal to 0. So we would set x equal to 0, and then we would set x plus 1 equal to 0, and find out that x is equal to negative 1. So let's do a more in-depth example. So what if we had 4x squared plus 16x? So here we're going to do GCF. And my GCF, what do they have in common? So if I look at 4 and 16, they have 2 in common and they have a 4 in common. GCF is greatest. So we are going to use our 4. Then both of them, they have an x. So my GCF would be 4x. Then what if we had to factor? So if we factor this, we would start with our GCF, and what we would have left would be x plus 4. We are thinking 4x times what number gives me 4x squared, and 4x times what number gives me 16x. And when we solve, we are setting this factored form equal to 0. So here we have 2 parts. So we set both parts equal to 0. 4x equals 0, and we find out that x is equal to 0. And we set x plus 4 equal to 0, and we figure out that x is equal to a negative 4. So GCF is 4x. My factored form would be this. And when I solved, because there are 2 parts, we are going to have 2 answers. So what if I factored something to a negative 2x times 3x plus 2, and then times an x minus 1? Let's say I factored, but our problem was asking, can you solve? We would solve by setting each of these 3 parts equal to 0. So negative 2x equals 0, and x is equal to 0. We would set 3x plus 2 equal to 0. We're going to use algebra and subtract 2 from both sides. So I get 3x is equal to a negative 2. Then I divide both sides by 3. These 3 cancel out, and I get x is equal to a negative 2/3. And last, let's set this last and third part, x minus 1 equal to 0, and I see that x is equal to 1. So my answer would be 0, negative 2/3, and 1. Then one last thing I want to show you is we always start out with GCF. So we want to see what do they have in common. Whether we have an example like x cubed plus 2x squared plus 4x, so you need to find the GCF, or you may have something like 2x squared plus 4x plus 16. Here, you would also want to find the GCF. Number 2, you're asking, do we do box method or versus our X method? So, do we use X or box? If A is equal to 1, we're going to use X is equal to, we're going to use our X method. If A is greater than 1, that is when we use our box method. Remember, A is what we have when we have ax squared plus bx plus c.